I never saw it coming. Looking back, I can't decide if I was naive, blind, or simply too trusting. Perhaps it was all three. For 2 years, I lived in a dream. Lavish vacations to tropical paradises, designer handbags casually appearing on our doorstep, and a lifestyle that seemed too good to be true. Spoiler alert, it was. It started with the little things. Andrew, my husband, would come home with small surprises. A new pair of earrings here, a spa day gift card there. "I've been working hard," he'd say with that charming grin. "We deserve this." I didn't question it. He told me he was managing investments for high-profile clients, and judging by the money he seemed to throw around, I believed him. We'd go out to dinners that cost more than my monthly grocery bill from before we married. He whisked me off to Paris for our first anniversary, insisting we fly first class. "Money is no object," he'd say, making me feel like I was living a fairy tale. But behind the scenes, a nightmare was brewing. The first crack appeared when I tried to apply for a credit card. I wanted one in my own name, just something simple for emergencies. The bank called me, their tone almost accusatory. "Ma'am, we can't approve your application due to your existing debts," the representative said. "Debts," I repeated, my voice shaky. "I don't have any debts." They explained that my name was tied to multiple maxed-out credit cards, a failed loan application, and even a line of credit from a furniture store. I'd never heard of any of them. Andrew brushed it off when I confronted him that night. "It's probably a mistake," he said, his eyes never meeting mine. "I'll handle it," but he didn't handle it. Over the next few weeks, I started digging, and what I found sent my world crashing down. Andrew had opened multiple accounts in my name, racked up tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and used it all to finance our dream life. Worse, he'd been unemployed for months, long before our anniversary trip to Paris. When I confronted him again, he finally admitted it. "It was for us," he said, trying to spin it like some romantic gesture. "I just wanted to make you happy." Happy? I couldn't breathe. My credit was ruined. My name was attached to debts I'd never agreed to, and the man I'd trusted more than anyone had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But the nightmare didn't end there. When I told my parents, hoping for support, they shocked me by taking his side. "He's your husband," my mother said sternly. "Marriage is about forgiveness." "He made a mistake," my father added. "Work through it together. That's what couples do." Mistake? This wasn't forgetting an anniversary or leaving the toilet seat up. This was a calculated act of fraud. But no matter how much I tried to explain, they refused to listen. To them, Andrew was still the charming son-in-law who'd swept their daughter off her feet. They even invited him over for dinner without telling me, forcing me to sit across from him as if everything was fine. The harassment started soon after. Relatives called me, one after another, preaching about loyalty and submission. "A wife's duty is to stand by her husband," my aunt lectured. "You'll embarrass the family if you leave him." I was losing my mind. Every day brought new accusations, new insults. Ungrateful, selfish, a bad wife. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, I found out about the other women. I was going through Andrew's emails, hoping to find evidence I could use to clear my name, when I stumbled upon a series of messages. Explicit, flirtatious, and undeniably damning. He wasn't just cheating on me, he was scamming at least 10 other women. Each woman believed she was his one and only. He'd taken money from some, promising to pay them back. Others had stories eerily similar to mine: luxury trips, expensive gifts, all funded by their identities and savings. I reached out to them, one by one. It wasn't easy. Some were defensive, unwilling to believe they'd been duped. But as I shared my story and provided evidence, the pieces started to come together. Andrew had built a web of lies, using women as pawns in his twisted game of financial fraud. By the time I filed for divorce, I felt like I'd aged 10 years. But I wasn't done. The other women and I banded together, pooling our resources to hire a lawyer. We reported him to the authorities, filed lawsuits, and made sure his schemes came to light. The court case was grueling. Andrew, ever the charmer, tried to paint himself as a misunderstood entrepreneur. He claimed he was a financial advisor and that all the women, myself included, had willingly given him access to their accounts. But when pressed to produce proof, such as contracts or legitimate client records, he faltered. "There aren't any," he stammered, his confidence unraveling under cross-examination. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: forged signatures, falsified documents, and testimonies from each of his victims. The other women and I sat in the courtroom, united by our shared anger and betrayal. One by one, we took the stand, exposing his lies for everyone to see. In the end, the verdict was clear. Andrew was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. The judge sentenced him to 10 years in prison, calling his actions a calculated and callous exploitation of trust. After the trial, my credit was finally cleared. The court recognized that I had been a victim, not an accomplice, and the fraudulent debts were wiped from my record. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. My parents begged me to reconsider. "Think of his future," my mother pleaded. "Do you want to ruin his life?" I laughed bitterly. What about my life? Or the lives of the other women he's destroyed? In the end, justice prevailed. Andrew was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud. He'd fooled us all, but he couldn't fool the law. The process of rebuilding wasn't easy. My credit score was in shambles, my savings were gone, and the emotional scars ran deep. But I wasn't alone. The women who'd once been strangers became my support system, and together, we found strength in our shared experience. I learned to trust myself again, to stand up for what I deserved. And while the fairy tale had turned into a nightmare, it taught me a lesson I'd never forget. Sometimes, the only person you can truly rely on is yourself.
Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to get updates every time we post a new story.